Welcome to The Point of View. This is your favorite current affairs show on television. Here on The Point of View, we pick the right topics, we get the right guests, and we ask the relevant questions about issues that matter to you. Tonight, we're focused on the U.S. election. Vote is Tuesday, 5th November. I have in studio Professor Ese Chikanku, who is with the, now they call it Unimac GIJ, but he's basically written about U.S. elections, covered it, and he has some very important insights for us. We'll also speak to the Voice of America's White House Bureau Chief, Patsy with the Suskara. She will tell us what's happening in Washington ahead of a very crucial election. Stay with us.
Life is a celebration of moments. Big and small.
The sun is scorching, I'm feeling the heat.
With Piva Drink, every moment becomes a refreshing celebration. From the beach to your home, in every corner of your world, Piva Drink adds a burst of refreshment.
Give me Piva Pop too, and tangerine.
Celebrate every moment with Piva Drink. Refreshment for every occasion. Piva Drink, a taste you will love.
Heat for Piva.
This advert is FDA approved.
Sanlam and Allianz is now Sanlam Allianz, Africa's largest insurer.
The 5 kg of rice has moved from 25 cedis to 165. Oh.
Hey! Boss, cement moved from 24 cedis to 105 cedis now. Hey!
The kenke is 5 cedis. The fish I have 10, 15, and 20 cedis. Which one do you want?
Hey!
Stop the A.
Hey!
Vote for change. Vote for John Mahama and the NDC.
Luck is everywhere.
8K. Hey! Hey, wait.
Complete this rhyme. Twinkle, twinkle, little star.
How are you working? How?
Who's that?
So tonight, as the world watches with bated breath the United States of America's election, we get some important perspectives on the matter. I'll be speaking to Dr. H.A. Sikanku, actually Professor H.A. Sikanku, who's covered U.S. elections as a journalist, teaches communication, and has written about U.S. elections, published a number of important documents on this. He's in the studio with me. Doc, good evening. Welcome to the program.
Good evening, Bernard. Thank you very much for having me.
We'll also be joined by the White House Bureau Chief for the Voice of America, Patsy Widakuskara. We're working with the VOA on this election. They'll be giving us reports throughout the period. Patsy will join us very shortly to share some on-the-ground insights about the U.S. But let's start with H.A. H.A., so you yourself have covered elections a bit.
I have.
I do know that which was the first election you witnessed in the U.S.?
2008.
2008. So
yes.
The historic Obama
election, yes.
You were there. You were in Iowa.
Yes, please.
It's interesting because the Iowa polls have come out, and I think there's some very interesting things happening. How different is this election from previous elections you've covered?
Well, I think that this is one of the major elections in the U.S. that we have the most contrasting candidates stand for election. The contrast between both candidates in these elections could not have been starker than any time in American history. we have a female candidate who happens to be the first African-American female nominee of a major political party, not just be the candidate, but come in at a time when the person who won the presidential primary nomination ticket, the incumbent president, Joe Biden, dropped out about 2 to 3 months to the election, and then Kamala Harris, female African-American, coming in. This could not have been written in a movie script. So just in terms of identity politics and in terms of the context of the election, there are just too many unknown variables in this election. Then on the other hand, we also have a first-term former president in the person of Donald Trump, who is a very unhinged, a very unrestrained, and a very different politically incorrect candidate in a manner in which we have never seen in American politics make a comeback to the election. This is the context within which this particular race is taking off, and things couldn't have been different from years ago in 2008 when Obama came. When Obama became president, the worst thing anybody could have said was that my cats were on top of my car when they were moving, the deplorables. Now that has been normalized in American politics, and that is how close the race, or that those are the stakes.
Will this be the first time a former president is running in the U.S., at least in recent times? Because I don't know. I do know that incumbent presidents have faced election and lost or won.
Right.
But this is a president who lost and is a former president.
Right.
I don't know if in recent years you've had anything like this.
No, never happened before. The closest we can think about is Richard Nixon, who was VP, then ran for election. No, when he was VP, he ran, he lost, then he came again and then became president, but then he was impeached. So that is the situation of a comeback. But in terms of a one-term president coming back again.
In the US?
No, that hasn't happened. The one-term president who came back and lost was George H.W. Bush Sr. So he had his term, decided to come back and lost. Then we had Jimmy Carter, who also had one term, came back again and lost. But
this was a continuous term.
It was a continuous term. So this is very different in that
he
regard.
lost his bid and has come back.
After
so usually
yes.
Carter and Co., when they lose, or Bush Sr.,
yes.
when they lose after the attempt,
yes.
they become former president.
Yes.
They don't. So this is a unique situation.
Situation in which there's a term actually in between the incumbent president. Then you have another president for a different party, and then he come again. So that is the difference within which.
But this is not the first woman, because Hillary was.
Yes.
And Hillary did contest Trump as well.
Yes, she did.
But this is not a white woman.
Yes.
But is it clear that she's black? Because the conversation, because she's partly Indian, partly black. Is her? I don't know. Is it clear? Is it correct to say she's African American, or she's more like a non-white? I don't know.
Right. No, I get so you are right to that extent. Officially, they use both. First, Indian American woman of Indian or Asian heritage to get the nomination, but then she officially identifies as black because of the Jamaican father.
So this is a very unique election in many ways. And I also think the fact that the former president has also been convicted. I don't know if there's been any.
Yes.
Like that. Is that something that's...
No. Donald Trump is the first former American president to ever be convicted of not just civil but criminal charges in U.S. election history. First ever time a former president has been convicted of criminal charges.
First ever?
First ever.
What do you mean? I thought Nixon. What was Nixon's...
Well, he resigned.
So Nixon was not convicted?
He was not. He resigned before it was time. No American
president has been indicted, charged, and convicted?
This has never happened.
What happened to Clinton?
Clinton was
he was impeached.
But even that did not pass the Senate. It just passed through the first house.
But he was not taken to court and tried?
No. This is
so this is different.
Criminal, yes.
This is different.
Yeah.
Well, the world is not really the same kind of place. So in terms of the personalities, they are different. But what about the issues, though? Because usually you say that elections have issues driving it.
Right.
Is this election also different by way of the issues, or is more the people?
Very much so. In fact, both of them. The premise that I laid, that the contrast was in terms of the personalities, but the contrast can also be applied or extended to the issues that are at stake. It is the first time ever that the United States has had the Roe versus Wade or an abortion legality overturned. It is now illegal to do abortions in the US. That has never happened in forever. So in terms of the issues, abortion and female reproductive rights have never been on the table in such a frontal manner as it has ever happened before. But then there is also the issue of democracy at risk. It is almost unthinkable, unfathomable, to conceive that a nation which is seen as the paragon of democracy, a nation which is seen as a global superpower as far as democracy is concerned, should have something as basic as the most basic tenets of democracy coming under threat. That the US should be having discussions about the survival of democracy in and of itself is as unusual as it could ever be. But that democracy is on the ballot. Democracy is on the bill this election.
Is that not a media creation? As in, is it not a message of one side that says democracy is on the ballot? Are you saying essentially that this election is a choice between democracy and dictatorship? Or what do we mean by democracy on the ballot? You need to explain that.
Yeah, Bernard, this is not a media creation at all. This is as real as and as palpable as voting to decide who leads the House of Representatives or Senate is. Democracy is at risk because we still have a former American president, somebody of no mean character and stature, doubting the legitimacy of an election that has had a president be in power for 4 years, still to date. Donald Trump cannot open his mouth and accept the results or the outcomes of the election. He would not say publicly if he would accept the outcome of this particular election. And this is an election where, for the first time, security is also on the bill. Only yesterday, there were images being shown of the vice president's home being barricaded and being extra fortified with security implantations, just because violence has become so characteristic of the US election in a way that we used to hear only of a banana republic. We used to only know of African presidents who would not accept outcomes of an election. That is the situation now. So the threats of violence against the background of January 6th, people died. And that threat is still looming large. The acceptability of the electoral results. And so based on that, both violence, peace, security, legitimacy of the elections, the undermining of democratic institutions. This is somebody who says when it comes to power, he is going to eradicate the Department of Education. There will be no Department of Education in the United States. This is somebody who is not willing to accept the credibility of the election board and the work that they do. So when I say that, and then this is somebody who says that on the first day, in his first term, he has an enemies list and he'll be an authoritarian for just 1 day. So,
but I get that Trump says a lot of things, but if you examine his candidature prior to 2016 and his presidency, yes, there were a lot of unusual things that happened, but do we take all his rhetoric in their literal sense? Because if the type of bombast that is associated with his speech characterizes his governance, probably the world would have been a different place by now. Is the US not a country with the institutions that can outlast whoever wins?
Yeah.
Because you seem to be suggesting that his rhetoric points to chaos, even in governance of an extreme kind.
Right. And that is why both chaos and conflict, and then I've also given reasons why even the idea of democracy is under threat, because he is somebody who has been found by researchers to exhibit the very qualities and characteristics of autocrats or dictators. But to your question about whether this can really manifest in reality because it's a country which is guarded by institutions and about long-held traditions, we already saw the first term of Donald Trump, and we saw that he was very unrestrained in his actions. You saw COVID come. This was a president who said people could use detergents or drink detergents in order to get rid of COVID. We saw the president who was not ready to attribute the COVID to science, but to Chinese, or to label people, in order to denigrate their very identity. And COVID was one of the main reasons why Donald Trump lost power, because of the way he handled it. He went out of his way to undermine efforts, very, very civil efforts that were being done to address one of the biggest public health pandemics that had ever been had. He teetered to dictators And he has said that he would not support Ukraine if he comes into power. He has attacked Joe Biden for supporting Ukraine. He says that he will give Israel a free rein. Israel should be given a free rein to postulate whatever policies they want to have when it comes to power. This is somebody who is undermining the global multicultural system because of his isolationism. So the very idea of internationalism, the very idea, he cannot even bring himself to accept that climate change is part of the reason why we have climate change is as a result of human activities or human efforts. And so he pulled America out of the climate change accord. So the point I'm making is that things that were assumed, things that were very normal in terms of democracy, for instance, the press, he says the press is the enemy of the people. He has an enemies list, political retribution. This is what he's coming to do. And these are not in civil language. These are not things that we know of the American political system or what American democracy is about. So when people say that the very idea of democracy, you ask me what is at stake in this election, I'm saying the very idea of democracy is at stake or is under attack in this election. I'm also saying that the idea of reproductive rights for women, because these are people who have not been willing to permit abortion even under the strangest circumstances, including incest. And so women are incensed by this, and they are marshalling up in droves and in numbers to vote against him.
So let's take it one by one. So your point is that this election is different because of the contrast in the
candidates,
and then the issues are pretty different. So although abortion has been an issue in elections, this is probably the first time it's the main issue.
You're right.
Probably more so than the economy, because if you listen to the campaign, Trump seems to focus on the economy more,
right,
whilst Kamala focuses on other issues. And then you also talk about Trump's own track record and his rhetoric being quite different. All right. We will take a breather and come back and see how close the races are, or the race in the various states are, because the other point about this election is, of course, the so-called swing states, or the states that decide the election. And then the possible outcomes based on what the polls are saying. My guest, Dr. Eche Sikanku, in studio, will also speak to VOA's White House Bureau Chief. Stay with us.
Complete this rhyme. Twinkle, twinkle, little star.
How are you working how?
Who's that?
Welcome to The Point of View.
Welcome to Face to Face on Channel 1 Television.
And hello, welcome to What the Papers Are Saying.
This be football made in Ghana. It be the only pidgin show where it day on your screen. Channel 1 TV.
Well, thank you so much.
Some people are late. You know, they have to catch up. City TV is now Channel 1 TV. You understand?
This is Channel 1 TV, telling your story, empowering change.
Complete this rhyme. Twinkle, twinkle, little star.
How are you working how?
Who's that?
Welcome to The Point of View.
Welcome to Face to Face on Channel 1 Television.
And hello, welcome to What the Papers Are Saying.
This be football made in Ghana. It be the only pidgin show where it day on your screen. Channel 1 TV.
Thank you so much.
Some people are late. You know, they have to catch up. City TV is now Channel 1 TV. You understand?
This is Channel 1 TV, telling your story, empowering change.
Complete this rhyme. Twinkle, twinkle, little star.
How are you working how?
Who's that?
Welcome to The Point of View.
Welcome to Face to Face on Channel 1 Television.
And hello, welcome to What the Papers Are Saying.
This be football made in Ghana. It be the only pidgin show where it day on your screen. Channel 1.
Welcome back. We are still on the U.S. election for tonight's edition of The Point of View, speaking to Dr. Ejesi Kanku, who's authored a number of publications. Indeed, The Afrocentric Obama is a masterpiece on the candidature and the presidency and the post-mortem of Barack Hussein Obama, a book that really catapulted Doc into public limelight. He's covered a number of U.S. elections. He was writing for the Daily Iowan.
In the Iowa State Daily.
Fantastic. So, and Iowa is one of the places where their results come out early.
Yes.
Even for their primaries. Let me go to the U.S. now. Sure. And before we came on here, I had a quick chat with Patsy Widaskuzwara, who is the VOA bureau chief, or Voice of America bureau chief for the White House. And I asked her to set the scene for us in relation to the election, what the key issues were, and the potential for disputes. Here are highlights of that conversation. Patsy, thanks for joining us on The Point of View.
My pleasure to be with you, Bernard.
Set the scene for us. What's happening in the U.S. a few hours to voting?
So in the U.S., there's not really one election day. I mean, there is an election day on Tuesday, but election has already started in some sense because there's a lot of early voting and also mail-in ballots. If you're asking me about the mood of the nation, I can say a couple of things. Right now, I think most people are anxious, and they are anxious for a couple of reasons. One reason is because it is so very tight between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris right now. All the polls suggest, one is either up by 1 or 2 points, and then the other is less by 1 or 2 points. So it's very, very close almost everywhere, especially in what's called the battleground states, swing states. These are 7 states out of the 50 U.S. states where it's very competitive, where past election results have shown that it could either go Democrats or Republican, and the result has always been within 3%. So those are the states that the candidates are focusing on. Right now, Kamala Harris is just crisscrossing across Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is one of the key battleground states with the majority of, or with the most electoral votes. And we can talk about that later on, because one thing that I can tell you is that election system in the US is very, very complicated. So that's one reason people are nervous, because it's so tight. And the other reason is there's also concern about election fraud. There's concern about potential for election violence. And also the fact that there may not be a peaceful transfer of power because one candidate may not accept the election. So we can talk about all of that. Whatever you want to ask me next, Bernard.
Wonderful. So you say there are 7 swing or battleground states. Which are they, and how close is the race in those battleground states?
There are 7 battleground states, and they are Nevada, Arizona, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia. And in the past, presidential races have either gone to a Democratic candidate or Republican candidate in these states by less than 3%. So it's very, very competitive. And one thing to understand that in the US, it's not one person, one vote the way it is in many parts of the world, including maybe in Ghana. But it is through what's called an electoral college system. So basically, when I go in to vote on my ballot, I see for presidential candidates Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. But in reality, what I'll be doing is not voting for them directly, but for electors who will cast their votes according to their pledged candidates. And so each state out of the 50 US states has a number of electoral college votes assigned to them, largely based on their population. And Pennsylvania has the most electoral college votes out of them all, that is 19. Total in the United States, there's 538. So each candidate to win must secure at least 270 electoral college votes. This is all very complicated, and in each state has different rules and regulations about who can vote, when they can vote, whether early mail-in votes, how are they allowed, and when the voting places close. And so if we think about it, it's not like one election the way it's normally done in most countries, because the US is a federal system. Think about it as 50 elections going on in parallel, and they all have very different rules.
Are there similar issues in Ghana? It's jobs, it's the economy, and maybe education. Are there 50 different issues, or there are some key issues driving this election in the US?
There are definitely key issues driving all of them, because the main concern for American voters, no matter where they are the economy and also immigration. And for this year particularly is the issue of the right to abortion. So right now, Donald Trump is polling so much better in terms of the economy. He's really honing in on this idea that inflation was low under his administration, and under Joe Biden, inflation was high. Of course, he would not accept the explanation, or his supporters would not accept the explanation that under Joe Biden, inflation was high because it was COVID and then post-COVID, right? So actually, inflation is getting as low as it was before the pandemic. Right now, it's about 2.2%, as I last recall the number. So it's quite low, but still, Americans are feeling that the prices are too high, and Donald Trump is all but too keen to jump in on this message. Immigration, also another key issue that he is using a lot in terms of saying that the borders are too wide under Biden. Biden's allowing all these illegal immigrants in, and that's also another key concern, especially for his supporters. For Harris, the issue is the women's right to abortion. So recently in the U.S., there's been this decision overturned by the Supreme Court. 3 of them were picked by Donald Trump. These are conservative judges who overturned what's called Roe v. Wade. This is our constitutional protection to the right of abortion. So right now, abortion, the right to have an abortion is, sort of in legal limbo. Many states have enacted very, very strict restrictions on abortion, including not allowing in certain very conservative states exceptions in the life of the mother, and medical emergencies, or even rape or incest. So this is an issue that's very much motivating women, very much motivating progressives and Democratic supporters. So we'll see out of these three issues, three top issues right now in this election, we'll see which one of them drives more voters to the polling station.
It is reported that there is a gender divide generally in the leaning of support. Can you talk a bit about that?
Absolutely. As I mentioned, women are very concerned about this issue of abortion. They're also concerned about some of the comments that Donald Trump and his circle have made that are considered misogynist or sexist or racist. And women are in general not very approving of those kind of behavior from candidate Donald Trump. So definitely a lot more women supporting Kamala Harris, while Trump has been making a lot more inroads with male supporters, including Black males and then Black, Latino, Hispanic supporters. Definitely gender divide, and women traditionally have been the more reliable voters we see in the past elections. That is usually women who are voting more than men. We'll see whether Donald Trump can motivate men enough to get him through to the finish line for the White House.
And final two questions, and thank you for staying with us. Is there a real chance that either side could say they wouldn't accept defeat? This usually happens in countries where democracies are not that entrenched, but it appears that for the first time, there's a serious concern that beyond even the court, some of either candidate may refuse the outcome depending on how it goes. Can you comment a bit about that?
Kamala Harris has already given her commitment that she will accept the election result. Donald Trump has not. He has been asked repeatedly whether he will accept this, and he will say that he will only accept the election result if they are fair. So right now, the message or the narrative that's going through to his supporters is that the only way that Donald Trump can lose is if the election is rigged. So that is the mindset. That is the narrative that has been sold to his supporters. What is also happening now is that the Trump campaign has been mobilizing people to become like these sort of like election integrity watch. So they will come to polling stations and sort of look at or question the processes and perhaps, throw some sort of sand into the gear of the election certification process. Now, that is a real concern because where election works, as I mentioned earlier, each state has a different rule. But in principle, the elections are certified by county. There's about 10,000 counties in the U.S. Each one of those counties or precincts will certify the election. Normally, it's certified by a group of people, Democrats and Republicans, county officials, and they just certify as a pro forma activity. But recently, in the past months, there's been more and more movement from the Trump campaign to empower these certification officials to not only just be the pro forma certification officials, but also to question and to investigate and to say that they will not certify the election unless they can be satisfied that the process is fair and square. So they are anticipating a lot of legal issues after the election related to certification. There's also some concern about political violence. In 2020, this had already happened. Some people who are motivated by misinformation and disinformation swarming into these polling stations and counting stations, demanding for the vote to stop the count because they feel like it's rigged. So hopefully none of that happens in 2024, but there's certainly a big fear that it.
My final question is this. You've covered the U.S. quite a bit. You were corresponding, you are now the bureau chief, so you've seen a few elections. Is this the closest by way of the polls that you've seen? And how close are these elections?
I've covered the U.S. election since 2003, so 21 years now. And yes, this has been the closest election that I have covered in terms of polling. It is also the most polarized, the most divisive, the most vitriolic, the most, just like a lot of craziness happening in this past election cycle. If you think about it, Donald Trump was indicted with 34 counts of felony, and then Joe Biden dropped out of the race, and then Kamala Harris, kind of like a whirlwind campaign in about 3.5 months. And now we have the situation where it's really down to the wire. It is, plus 1% or minus 1% everywhere. Unless in, everywhere, particularly in the battleground states. And I think there's really a huge concern about post-election violence, post-election disturbance. Just to give you an idea, all the political journalists that I know of have been trained in hostile environment training. This is the kind of training that they send war correspondents to. That is the level of anxiety and concern that people are facing right now. Certainly being faced by voters, certainly by analysts, but both of the campaigns are projecting optimism, saying that they will become the winner, and we'll see. I don't think the results will come out tomorrow, but maybe it will. Who knows? If we remember, in 2020, it took until the Saturday after the Tuesday to actually have the final result. So we'll keep on posting you with the results.
Stay safe, Patsy, and thank you for talking to us.
My pleasure. Thank you, Bernard. Take care.
Wonderful. We've been talking to Patsy Widakuswara, who's the White House bureau chief for the VOA, setting the scene for us ahead of a busy night for her and all the reporters in the US. So that was Patsy Widakuswara, who's the Voice of America bureau chief for the White House. So she's covered elections. And Doc, you heard it. She says since 2003, she's covered elections. This has been the most divisive, but also the closest. I want to focus on the second issue, the closeness of the election. I mean, if the candidates are so contrasted, how come, are you surprised at how close the race is, or knowing America, this is how it's supposed to be? I'm not surprised at all. You're not surprised? Just 10 seconds to talk about the democracy, why it's a threat to democracy and why the whole world should be watching. It's not a personal attack on Donald Trump. Two other factors. One, which is that the peaceful transfer of power is a major characteristic of democracy, and he has not assented to that. He has undermined that peaceful transfer of power. But he's not in power, so he's not the one who, I mean, if the father is not in power, so how would that affect peaceful transfer of power? No, he did not accept the electoral outcome of the previous election, the previous one, 2020. Yes, so that peaceful transfer of power is under threat just by his actions. As in from Biden to him, or from him, but he's not yet president. No, what I'm saying is, when he lost the election the first time, the transfer of power was very violent and very vicious, characterized by January 6th, because he was prepared and he was ready to hang on to power. That very principle of the transfer of power came under attack because he was not ready to accept the outcome of the election. And that is not a feature of what a Democrat does. I get you. Yes, that's And then the loyalty to a single person, his personality, loyalty to the person and not to the nation. And the next is that he said he would govern as a dictator, and these were his own words. So no, I just wanted to put it in context. It's not a personal attack. No, I haven't said that. I'm just trying to put at points. My point though is Patsy's second point about she's covered elections for 21 years, and this is the closest. I mean, that's very serious. So away from that, in terms of the closeness, honestly, I'm not surprised, because after 2016, nothing surprises me again in American politics. I mean, for somebody who has used incendiary language, as you can imagine, in politics, somebody who has, undermined the very notion of political civility, who has labeled people, called Africa a shithole, said that he would grab women by the pussy and all of that, who has, even disabled people, mocked them on the campaign stage. You know, we talk about political decency and political civility. For somebody to do that and still amass that much of support in the American political system, maybe that says more about the American society than about him, right? There you go. So I mean, but some would say it's resilience, right? Because we've spoken about being convicted, we've spoken about the whole shooting, right? Somehow, and of course, Biden owns dropping out as well. What do you make of the whole shooting incident and Biden? Because Biden, prior to the debate, seemed to be in the lead, and then when that debate happened, people were like, "No, this guy is not ready." Right. And the whole Democratic Party that kept a man who obviously didn't look fit, and I use fit in a physical sense, possibly even in the alertness sense, right? The people of America felt they had been deceived, because in the debate, clearly Biden wasn't himself, and this is a man sitting in the world's most powerful office. So clearly the Democrats have a problem as well. If I'm an American watching Biden debate Trump, and I'm saying, this guy doesn't look as if he even is fit physically. And yet you made him, you told us he was running the country. So, I mean, could it just be about Trump? It could also be the Democrats and some of the challenges people are facing in the economy, right? Which is why they seem to trend towards him. You don't think so?
Yes. So the point I'm trying to make is that, you see, the nature of Donald Trump has loomed large over the election in a way that even very basic fundamental tenets of democracy have now been called into question. So even the press, I mean, who even in Ghana thinks that the press is the enemy of the people? We all talk about the fourth estate. So that is the point, that his nature has loomed large over the election. But if you say that the Democrats themselves have issues...
No, what I'm trying to get is, what I'm saying, the election is not closed because of Trump. The election is closed because Americans, either half of them believe in his values and another half believes in democratic values. And possibly because they're also not happy with the way things are. Okay. Because an election is only closed if the opposition has as much support as the government. So, and then maybe Kamala Harris herself could have issues. The fact that she came in late, the fact that she's a woman, the fact that she's colored. So my point is basically not about Trump making the race tight, but the circumstances.
Yeah. And I'm not even saying Trump made the race tight. I'm just talking about the nature of the election. But we've moved away from that. Now, if you talk about the closeness of the race, yes, it is close because of certain factors. And you see, and it was a good segue that we're coming in from as to why this election, what is at stake in this election. It's a good segue to it because it tells us, and I like what you said about the fact that elections are also as much about, it tells us a lot about the people and also about the political culture and the political socialization process in a country as much as the people. That is one beauty or one thing that election tells us. It brings to fore the values that are important to a nation. It brings to fore the cultures and the cleavages, the dominant issues. Where is the society heading? What kind of people are we? What is the nature of our world, our worldview, and where do we want it to go? That is a nice segue into it because it also reflects concerns that Americans have about what it means to be American. It reflects concerns about what it means, what Americans' position in the world is. And these are the people who follow Donald Trump are people who are tired of the political elites or elite. Donald Trump said he was going to drain the swamp, and these people followed him. There are people who also are tired of politically correct politicians who have gone through the mill, and they want somebody who is a political outsider. They believe that the system has been against them, that the system has backed them, and they need somebody who will speak their language. They need somebody who will speak for them. If you break down the polls, one of the big surprises of this election is the support that Donald Trump has among black voters, especially among African American men. The reason why, if Donald Trump is that much of an antithesis to democracy and an antithesis to the American system, why is Kamala Harris not winning? Why is it as close as it is? That is one answer to it. Because these people see Donald Trump as being reflecting who they've been vilified for a long time. There are people who have come under a lot of pressure under the system. They want to fight back. And they see in Donald Trump somebody who speaks the language that they speak. For people who live day to day on the day-to-day paycheck, people who are being affected by the rising price of groceries, of bread, and of high rental prices, these are people who believe that the system, the institutions, democracy has not worked for them. And somebody who backs the system, somebody who represents an antithesis to what the institutionalization
so he's channeling their frustration.
Yes, he represents that. And that is why it is as close as it is. Because a lot of people see in Donald Trump a political hero. For immigrants, and that's why immigration is a major issue. There are many people who do not like the colorization of America in terms of the influx of immigrants. They think that immigrants are taking their jobs, they are destroying the very fabric and the very nature of what American society is. They are eating their cats and their dogs and eating their pets. They blame almost every problem in America on immigrants.
I've spoken to immigrants who say they support Trump, and I'll give you a couple of reasons. One of them said, look, the Republicans under Trump don't tax our, I won't use the word wealth, but our incomes as much because I've worked hard, I've earned my income. And the person believes that under the Democrats, there's a lot of taxation that is used for social programs. And the person is like, look, I've left my country, I've come to the US, I've worked hard, I'm making my money. Why should I lose all of that to government? So somehow there's a sense in which taxation, companies seem to feel like under Republicans generally, and the view is that under Trump, the economy was much stronger.
Yes.
Right? So if an election is about an economy, it's very interesting how it changes voters' minds as well, right?
But that is why it is close, because if you have even immigrants supporting Trump, remember the
some immigrants
supporting Trump. The people who are even fearful of immigrants, who are resistant to immigration in America, are not necessarily those immigrants. They are the heartland of America, the typical white working class. If he has those votes, he has immigrants will support people supporting him because they think, and you're right, I've met students or people who have come into the US legally who think that under Donald Trump, job opportunities were there, that the economy was better. So if you have that and you have those...
But is that not a fact?
No, I'm not even disputing it.
Yeah,
I'm just saying
that's
that...
a fact, right?
Yeah, I'm not disputing it. So I'm just saying that if you add that to the xenophobia, to the white working class, the people who are interested in protecting, America from the influx of immigration. That is where
the support is coming from.
Do you understand? Yes. So it means that there's just a wide cleavage of people where he's drawing that support from. And you would even be surprised, even the Hispanic vote is not a shoe-in for the Democrats. Because typically, Hispanics had historically voted Democratic. But we are finding out that the Republicans are cutting in more and more into the Hispanic vote. It is no more an automatic vote for the Democrats again, because more and more younger Hispanics are identifying as Americans and less as Hispanics. More and the research, sociologists have said that the more an immigrant group is vilified, the more they are labeled, the more people try to resist it, and the more they try to tune into the norm to look like the mainstream. And so many younger Hispanics are interested in identifying more as American than from the country of origin of their parents. And so if you put all of this in, you can understand why the race is close. And then, of course, the last factor, the economy. The inflation, the grocery prices, the high cost of rent and house estates and electricity. I mean, I kid you not. There are many Americans today who cannot afford health care, who find it very, very difficult to survive under these circumstances. The value of the dollar, $100 bill, is not the same as it was before. And there are many people who are concerned about surviving on a day-to-day basis. The jobs, the availability of jobs is a very big problem, to the extent that people are even questioning the value of a college degree, because people finish college and they are unemployed, they don't get jobs to do, and they are really under debt. Wow. These are very, very serious issues and real issues and of real concern. And those people look at Donald Trump and say, I do not like how he speaks. I may not like his personality. I don't even like the way I don't like what he says. I don't like the way he speaks. I don't like his persona. But heck, this guy was good for our country. The economy was good under him. And so I think that I'm going to damn everything and vote for him. And that is why the thing is as close as possible. Wow.
We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll ask the final question as to what either outcome means for Ghana, Africa generally, even the rest of the world, right? Geopolitically, will there be a difference? Some people feel like U.S. foreign policy is the same, but it looks like Trump is a different situation. We'll deal with that when we come back. Stay with us.
Complete this rhyme. Twinkle, twinkle, little star.
How are you working how?
Who is that?
Welcome to The Point of View.
Welcome to Face to Face on Channel 1 Television.
And hello, welcome to What the Papers Are Saying.
This be football made in Ghana. It be the only pidgin show where it day on your screen. Channel 1 TV.
Thank you so much.
Some people are late. You know, they have to catch up. City TV is now Channel 1 TV. You understand?
This is Channel 1 TV, telling your story, empowering change.
Complete this rhyme. Twinkle, twinkle, little star.
How are you working how?
Who's that?
Welcome to The Point of View.
Welcome to Face to Face on Channel 1 Television.
And hello, welcome to What the Papers Are Saying.
This be football made in Ghana. It be the only pidgin show where it day on your screen. Channel 1 TV.
Thank you so much.
Some people are late. You know, they have to catch up. City TV is now Channel 1 TV. You understand?
This is Channel 1 TV, telling your story, empowering change.
Complete this rhyme. Twinkle, twinkle, little star.
How are you working how?
Who's that?
Welcome to The Point of View.
Welcome to Face to Face on Channel 1 Television.
And hello, welcome to What the Papers Are Saying.
This be football made in Ghana. It be the only pidgin show where it day on your screen. Channel 1 TV.
Thank you so much.
Some people are late. You know, they have to catch up. City TV is now Channel 1 TV. You understand?
This is Channel 1 TV, telling your story, empowering change.
Welcome back. We're still on the point of view. Tonight, we're taking a peek into the U.S. election, which voting begins. Of course, voting has already started. If you follow the way U.S. elections are, over 75 million voters have already cast their ballots in the early ballot. But voting officially is for November the 5th, and then it will end by close of that day. I've been speaking to Patsy Widakuskara, who's the Voice of America's bureau chief for the White House. I also have Dr. Echi Sikanku in studio. Doc, so I've been reading a couple of interesting articles. Professor Kedibone Fago, who's the director for Northwestern University in South Africa.
Okay.
He essentially has a very different view as to what either victory means for Africa as compared to one Dr. Sisman Mutlong. So the first person, the former, says that it seems as if Kamala Harris already visited Africa. So a victory for Kamala Harris is more positive for Africa.
Okay.
Now, he believes that Trump may even cancel AGOA. But Dr. Mutlog, from the same university, he's a political and international relations expert, he says, the U.S. has vested interest in ensuring certain things, and whichever wins, the policy towards Africa wouldn't change that much. In fact, Bloomberg has an article today that says Biden is not doing well in Africa, and neither Kamala nor Trump will do much better. So there's a whole raft of views around Africa. For those who think that Kamala is better for the continent just because of who she is, those who feel that U.S. foreign policy, basically Africa is no longer such a big issue. And then those who even think that even under Biden, the Africa stature, if you compare to Bush, the second Bush, and even Obama, where do you stand? Do you agree that generally Africa in the U.S. foreign policy is diminishing? That's what some of these authors are saying.
I completely agree with the broad view that Africa's position or the attention that is paid to Africa within a U.S. political governance system or electoral system is very, very limited and very low. If you did a context analysis of the speeches of the presidential candidates and the presidential primary candidates, and you looked at how many times Africa was mentioned in it, sometimes you would find zero. You look at the presidential debate, for instance, a big stakes debate, Africa's name never popped up in it. So I do agree that Africa really does not loom large for a U.S. presidency as much as possible. But neither does foreign policy, except, of course, it threatens America in a very direct way. For instance, the war in terror, Iraq and Afghanistan. Before then, foreign policy is not always a major issue in the election. But to the extent that we live in a global system, to the extent that we live in an interconnected world, to the extent that the world continues to cooperate on a lot of issues such as climate change, address war, address conflict, addressing poverty and other things. We have a global health issues, public health pandemic. I do still think that the United States influence on the world and their position on the issues is very important. So for instance, yes, from what you read, some of them will say that, well, they don't think that whoever wins, the policies would be starkly different and that they would follow a major template. That is true to an extent because US has its own foreign policy interest and national interests, which are almost always very, very similar. So their relationship with Europe is very important to them. So irrespective of who becomes president, I think NATO as a military alliance or as an international issue is always more important. You look at the war in Russia and Ukraine, that is more important. The money and the dollars that are sent to Ukraine. You look at the Israel and Palestine conflict, that is definitely an issue. The war in Lebanon, that is definitely a bigger issue for them. Energy issues, the war on terrorism, those are major issues for the US. China is the major issue for US in terms of foreign policy, in terms of their debts. So yes, but where Africa comes in is that on the international front, we are still part of an international system, and Africa is trying to trade with the rest of the world. Africa is trying to have bilateral relations with the rest of the world. A lot of Ghanaian students travel outside to go and vote. So if racism is an issue, if George Floyd becomes an issue, if you cannot even go to class and be guaranteed that you'll be respected or you'll be shot or you'll be threatened just by your color, I mean, we should definitely be concerned about American elections to that extent. When the economy is bad in the US, you have a lot of people out there who send people money back home. In fact, there are some people whose very survival in this country is predicated on the economic wherewithal of their relatives who are abroad. Now, if these people, if policies come in where they are not able to get jobs, or they say, foreign students who finish got to come back to your country, this is going to be very, very huge for them. Or deportations, how stringent they are on deportations or not. Donald Trump has said that when he comes, he's going to promulgate the biggest massive deportation ever in the history of mankind that has been held.
But did he do that in his first
Well,
term?
he deported over 350,000 people.
But the deportations continued under Biden.
They did.
In fact, there were deportations under Obama too.
They were. What I'm saying is that he has promised even a massive one when he comes into power. But if you look at economics and business, Donald Trump had the Prosper African Initiative to support U.S. investors who were trying to form business coalitions and deals in Africa. So Donald Trump, who although he did not step onto the continent, he did not veer away from, I don't know what term to use, people say handouts or something. They have this little handouts or things that they just keep as far as Africa is concerned. So George Bush will have his own initiative. Bill Clinton had brought AGOA. Obama brought the Power Africa initiative where he wanted to increase energy production in Africa.
So you don't see that changing under either president. There's always something for Africa.
Project,
yes. Pet project, that some sort of legacy thing.
Thank you. Yes, that would happen, and I don't think
it will change under either president.
Yeah, I don't see those changing under either president.
But the fact that Kamala has already been to the continent as vice president, and the fact that her father is from the Caribbean,
right?
Some people feel that it's just better for Africa, right? But it doesn't always translate, because some people even argue that George Bush Jr. He did much more for Africa than Obama in terms of substantial things. When he brought, for example, the Millennium Compact. Obama did some things, but some people argue that Bush actually pushed a lot more for Africa. So it doesn't really seem as if there's a correlation between where you're coming from originally and your posture towards the continent?
Yes. Obama, I wouldn't say Bush did more necessarily, because apart from the power initiatives that he had a Young African Leaders Initiative.
Which is still continuing.
Which has still continued.
Yeah.
Some of the benefits or the representations are very qualitative. If Kamala Harris should be elected president tomorrow, we cannot put money on what that represents for a lot of young black females, irrespective of wherever they are in the world. That very image of Kamala Harris taking her hand up, putting her hand on that Bible, being sworn in office, is going to represent a very seismic moment in global politics. And we know how America seems to, in a very psychological way, affect the rest of the world, because when things are normalized in the US, they become very normalized in other places, the Americanization
but on that point,
of the world.
Do you get surprised that a lot of Africans prefer Trump in the view that, particularly the religious Africans, because when Kamala came to Ghana, she spoke a bit about the anti-LGBTQ bill, and she did generate some anger in that community of those who promulgated that law. And there's a feeling among particularly the Christian group that Trump is better for protecting certain values. So it seems as if those who live outside the US, they have a certain different way of seeing the election. From a social point of view, they seem to prefer what Trump represents.
No, it explains, because there are some people who cannot just wrap their heads around, despite the fact that a personality like Donald Trump practically insults your continent. There are people here who still support him. I think what you've said explains that. They cannot wrap their head around why some people support him. But what you've just said are major. I've met people here in Ghana and other parts of Africa who have said that as far as they are on just the issue of LGBTQ, that is a deal breaker for them. And that alone is what lent their support to Donald Trump. And it's the same thing with the evangelical support that he has even in the US. In Nigeria, there were people who went on a march, with banners to demonstrate their support for Donald Trump, because they were afraid that a democratic presidency was going to lead to the infestation or the promulgation of LGBTQ or gay rights in their society, which was an anathema to what Africa represents. And so because of that, it explains why for them, they cannot even afford for a Democrat or for Kamala Harris to become president.
So now let's just make a prediction. The polls say it's too close. If you were a betting man, who would you put your money on?
So let's go to the swing states. Okay, very quickly.
Yeah.
Because that is what will lead to whatever.
So let's do quickly. We have just 1 minute. So let's go to North Carolina.
North Carolina, Trump is up by 0.1%.
You think he'll win?
I think he would get North Carolina.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Pennsylvania, neck and neck. No matter what poll you're looking at, that one is neck and neck. 48-48.
Wisconsin.
Trump and no, Kamala up by 4 points.
Michigan.
Kamala up by 3-4 points. But surprisingly, yesterday the New York Times released their final poll, and they had Trump up in Michigan.
Are you kidding me?
I'm serious.
Arizona.
Trump up by 2 points.
Georgia.
Trump up by Georgia too. Some people say Trump was up for a long time, but the whole thing
it's split.
It's split.
So
because
if you wake up on Thursday morning and Trump wins, would you not be completely surprised?
No, not at all. Because the final polls that came yesterday, I'm telling you that even in Georgia, Trump is winning there. Arizona, he's winning there.
Neither outcome will surprise you.
No, neither.
This is how close is it, because I know you've always called US elections pretty well. Yes. Neither outcome will surprise you.
Neither outcomes will surprise, because even the day before the election, different polls, credible ones, are saying different things.
Wow. Well, we'll be here to tell you what happens. Thanks for watching. I've been talking to Dr. Eche Sikanku, who's what are you now? Professor Eche Sikanku.
Yes.
He's a big man. He has written about US elections and he teaches communication and journalism. Also had Patsy Widakuskara, who is the Voice of America's bureau chief for the White House. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.